So I'm going to do the same thing I did, starting with just the macro. And then I want to get into what you guys are doing with AI. Because I do think there's so much coming at leaders, investors every day. Markets react sometimes, and sometimes they don't. But when you think about the constant things that are coming at us, how does it impact any of your decisions that you're thinking, whether it's investing in technology, doing things with your workforce, whether it's AI? What do you do? Anything changing?
Yeah, so there's certainly a lot happening right now. There's a lot in the headlines for sure. At Nascar, we are laser focused. We are committed to growing our sport. That's our goal for this year for sure. And everything we're doing is pushing that down the field. And so whether it's what we're doing on the track, off the track, everything is going towards how can we grow our sport? How can we get in front of more people? How can we make it more exciting? And our AI initiatives are a big part of that. And so I'm excited to get into what we're doing and how we're using AI to really help transform our company.
How big a part is it? Tell me about a little bit the conversation about how you guys are approaching it.
Yeah.
Is it all in, everybody, top to bottom, bottom to top?
I think we want to make decisions that make the most sense. You know, I think in 2024, it was kind of the year of the wow. We were just exposed to what AI could be, and there was a lot of excitement around that. 2025 was kind of the how, and so we were like, okay, how do we integrate this? What do we have to have in place to make sure that there's kind of this front door to a lot of our AI tools? And then 2026 is really the now year for us, where scaling up is our goal. And so how can we get this tool, this artificial intelligence, into the hands of our people who are already doing great work, help them to do greater work in fractions of the time? That's the goal for this year.
And it's really easy, right?
Absolutely, super simple. You know, one of the
No, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, well, you know,
or is it easy?
Well, I think you realize, and one of the things that we realized at the company was this, that there were people already jumping into these technologies before we even stood them up as an enterprise. And so a lot of that moved our decision, like where are our people right now? What do they actually want? Where do they feel comfortable? And how can we come alongside of them and empower them to do better work?
So Rich, give us an idea of what you guys are playing with, what programs, what LLMs. Give us an idea of the process and who's doing what right now, who's kind of playing, who's maybe getting more serious in terms of workflow.
Yeah, so we've partnered with OpenAI, so ChatGPT, and we are setting up our organization to be able to have each and every employee at some point in the future where it makes sense to be able to utilize that with their work. As a matter of fact, I think when you start your day one at the job and you get that laptop, you should also receive a contextual way of using AI for your role. And that's where our goal is. How can we equip you from day one being AI enabled?
So where are you in that process? And tell me, give me an idea of people, what they're doing, and if anything has already had an impact.
Yeah, so we have, I would say, around 500 users who are playing around with AI.
Out of how many at Nascar?
I would say we're looking at maybe around 1,400. And
okay.
So we want to do things that make sense. We want to do things that scale well. We want to build good foundations. As AI tools come out, we want to make sure that governance is in place and that people feel empowered, but also competent when it comes to using these tools, that we're not just giving everybody a race car, we're also giving them a license and giving them training to get that license. And we're seeing reductions in the most repeatable tasks, which represent the majority of the work that most of our people are doing. And so it's been great just to see and experience how much people are enjoying and seeing how much more work they're getting done.
How do you think about individuals who might be like, I'm not so into this?
Yeah, I think, you know, NASCAR is a sport, been around for over 80 years. You don't get to that place without having the ability to pivot and adapt when the technological landscape changes.
Yeah.
The current wave right now is AI, and we are already adapting to that. And so we are making sure that this is the two engines that are driving everything we're doing in AI is this proven to be effective, and is it inspected to be safe? those two engines are driving everything behind our AI tools.
I want to talk to you about governance issues because there's governance for the company. There's governance, excuse me, for the customer. There's governance for the workers. If you're a publicly held company, think about governance for investors. So how do you kind of get around that? And I think we're talking a lot about that, considering the spat that we've seen between Anthropic and the Pentagon. And what's interesting, even this morning, OpenAI came out and said, yeah, we want, now that they've kind of come in to say, we'll work with the government, but saying we too want some guardrails, especially when it comes to mass surveillance of U.S. citizens. So how do you think about that?
Well, I think these stories should cause everyone at every company to think about AI governance in a way that speeds up our attention to that idea way faster than we've been doing in the past. And I think for the most part, you get a sense that governance is the brake pedal when you front load all the tooling. So you want to make the headlines, you want to get that sense of speed, and so you might push tools that have not gone through that governance, and then it'll seem like this is going to slow us down to have to circle back and check to see. But if you front load that governance, if you say, hey, we're going to inspect this tool, we're going to understand how we're going to deploy this, who we're going to deploy it to, who's going to manage that, it really gives the freedom at the end for people to be able to utilize that tool in a way that they know is safe.
You said something that was really cool to me on our planning call, and this whole idea that basically every employee, certainly with agentic AI, becomes a manager.
Yeah.
And so not everybody is we've all worked with people who weren't meant to be managers. But having said that, like, there are skills with managing people or processes or workflows, correct? Or an agent, an AI agent.
Yeah. And I think the faster we realize that that is what's happening when we offer these tools to our employees, I think the more robust we create on-ramps to things like managerial roles, because there's a lot of experience you're getting in how you deploy your AI alongside your work. How are you positioning it? How are you setting it up to be in your workflow? Will really speak to how you might bring in a human being to do the same.
You know, what's interesting, too, that you said to me, you know, you mentioned you're working with OpenAI, ChatGPT, but you talked about bringing in a partner to develop department-level champions.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we...
Like, I think of a race team, right?
Yeah,
and to
absolutely.
some extent, you've got folks who are kind of championing everybody.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we all have to realize is that there are people in your companies right now who have amazing ideas when it comes to whether it's just using the chatbot or even some agentic stuff, some custom GPTs. What's beautiful about our partnership is that when we bring in a partner to help us do that, we're saying go in, look at our people, research, find the people who are not at the intermediate level, the people who are at the advanced level, really pushing the envelope, really coming up with some really interesting use cases. We take that, turn it into a playbook that we can then distribute to other employees. So now we have repeatable workflows that continue to increase the ROI we're already spending.
You already see that?
Yeah, absolutely.
How long does this process take? And I'm curious about expectations and having realistic expectations about putting this into effect, having all workers, it sounds like, or most of your workers at Nascar doing it. What's the expectations around that, and what's the timeline? Because the world is moving really fast.
For sure.
And I just think about the AI discussion that we're having, that we've gone very quickly, you know, from building out the infrastructure, spending on chips, it's still happening, to inference and agentic AI. It's moving rather quickly, and so I'm just curious how fast you guys want to do this, and what's your timeline?
Yeah, you know, at Nascar...
At the same time, people will say, forgive me, that we still don't know a lot.
Correct.
And we don't know about kind of what's the smart impact of all of this.
Yeah, and I think the best thing that we can do right now is we need to investigate, find what works, deploy that, be skeptical about the things that we're not so sure about, and to have the courage to delay things that won't stand up to the enablement governance plans that we have as a company. Obviously, we want to move quickly, but at the same time, we're not willing to sacrifice safety for that speed. And so the industry speed is something to definitely observe, but not necessarily one to copy if it compromises us on the governance end.
Any advice to the folks that are here as they think, I mean, it's an investment audience, you think about this process, the things you need, any kind of final thoughts?
Yeah, I would encourage you all to really think about AI cross-functionally. And so it's not just for your IT departments, it's really for everyone. And so I would encourage you all to talk to your leaders, get them together, figure out what use cases can be.
When you say leaders, is it your C-suite involved in this?
Absolutely.
So go ahead, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
C-suite, your departmental managers, how are we coming together to look at use cases and ways in which AI can really take us to the next level?
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Rich, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Rich Bowman of Nascar.
All right.
Thank you so much, Rich.